So I had the first thing on my list was to say who I am, but I think we've covered that. So we can move on. I wanted to just talk about why we're having this panel. It's a question of recruitment, and I think it's important for everyone here because, well, without people, we can't do anything for animals. And certainly for me, it's been one of the most difficult things to get right, and it still is. So that's why we've got 3 people here who have been doing this for several years, many years, some of you, and have got different experiences. So we're going to hear from them. I will just introduce them very briefly. First, we've got Ania Peszała from Anima International Poland, Otwarte Klatki. Woo! So inspiring. And then we've got Mahi Klosterhalfen from Albert Schweitzer Foundation. He's the CEO and president of the organization. And then we have Catherine Derieux from GFI Europe, and she's a senior people operations officer, manager. Almost got it right. There we go. Hey, big hand up. So I'm just going to dive straight in. I think we're probably going to have a lot of audience questions. I think you should be asking them if you haven't even already started. I've got quite a list, so maybe we can start with, what does your recruitment process actually look like? It's probably something that you can have a very long answer to. Maybe, maybe not. But maybe we can start with you, Catherine.
Sure, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Awesome. So maybe to preface that a little bit, we have a process that we know is quite involved for candidates. But the good thing about that is that candidates get to know us as much as we get to know them. And we have a process that's very much skills focused. And so at the end, we have a very high level of confidence that the candidates that we hire can do an amazing job. And that means that we can work leading with a lot of trust and give people a lot of autonomy. So what the process looks like, we have several stages. At the application stage, you will fill like a regular application form, so kind of giving your contact information. And then you will complete what we call work sample tasks. So it's usually 1 or 2 fairly short questions that are related to the job you would be doing. So usually how you would approach a certain task or things like that, so that we can get a sense of how you think, how you would, again, work in that job. And then we have a couple of rounds that are kind of written assignments. One of them is usually timed, so about 2 hours long, but we give a lot of flexibility to candidates to do it when it works for them. And then another one that we get, which is not timed, so maybe more kind of strategic questions where you can think about it, go away for a moment, and then come back to it. And then we move on to interview rounds. So yeah, that would be kind of the gist of it. It kind of now changes a bit depending on the role. We have a bit more flexibility, but that was kind of the initial structure of it.
Cool. Can I just add as well, I think it's probably useful context for everyone, where you're actually working. So we've got Anya. Do you want to go ahead and tell us where you work? Where do you work? I have no idea, considering we work in the same organization.
I work in Otwarte Klatki.
In Poland.
In Poland,
that's the question, yes.
Specifically in Poland, as operations manager. So recruitment process is a big part of my work because I'm mainly focused on people operations. So yeah, it's a big part of my work. Yeah.
And Mahi, if I understand right, you work mainly in Germany, but also other countries.
Yes, in Poland we have a small foundation where I'm hardly involved in hiring. We just hired a new country director, though there I was involved. And yeah, in Germany I've been doing this for 15 years.
15, okay. And Catherine, is it throughout Europe for GFI, yeah?
Yes, so we are a remote-first organization, so we can recruit all across Europe. We currently have people employed in 7 different countries, so France, the UK, Belgium, Austria, Spain, the Netherlands, and Germany, and I think that's all of them, and more to come soon.
Nice. So Mahi, maybe you can tell us about your recruitment process, and if you want to just focus on Germany, that might make the most sense.
It's not that different from what we heard. Like, I don't think it would add a lot of value, and it's probably, if you Google, like, what does a recruitment process typically look like, you pretty much get our process. However, like, I heard quite a bit about the Anima recruiting process, and there are some interesting features, and if we could get to that, I think that would be a lot more interesting than our recruitment process.
On that note, we have Anya to explain it.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, so our recruitment process also has few stages, 5 stages. Also, we have a questionnaire at the beginning, so we don't collect cover letters, we don't collect CVs. We have a questionnaire, which is, I believe, help us get more information than traditional form of CV. So that's the first stage. The second stage is we basically check if candidates and organizational values are the same. And this is some kind of, I think I can call it like some kind of cultural values fit to the organization. And this is a common stage for every single recruitment process. So for us, it's like a kind of a base for every single job position. And this is, I believe, the most important stage of the recruitment process for us. So we check skills and abilities connected with specific job position on the third stage. So this is the third one. The fourth one is structured interview. So basically, we conduct interviews at the end of the process because the people who make a good impression on the interview aren't always the people who might be a good fit to the specific role. And first 3 stages are also randomized and anonymized in our recruitment process. So recruiters, they don't know basically who they score, and they like meet candidates face to face on the 4th stage, which is structured interview, and the 5th stage is a work trial. So we meet with someone in person and spend 2 days to work together. Interviews and work trials are paid. So yeah, we don't want someone to resign, for example, because of the financial reasons. I know that our recruitment process is time consuming, also for us, but also for candidates. Yeah, I don't know what to add. I think that's all.
Go on, Mahi.
I have a follow-up question. You briefly mentioned that you randomize things. Could you explain a little more?
So we have a specific recruitment tool that was created by Philip. I don't know if Philip is here. He's like
there he is.
He's our spreadsheet guy. He's a spreadsheet master. And so he created a recruitment tool from zero to meet our recruitment needs. So basically what the tool does is, I think it's called pseudonymization. So that means that it mixes all the answers together. So when a recruiter gets the questions from the specific stage, it's like the first person in question 1 isn't the same person as the first person in question number 2. So it's totally randomized, and we did it because sometimes, even if something is anonymized, someone might start with a very good answers in the beginning. So we don't want our recruiters to be biased with the rest of the answers. So that's why we mixed all answers together. And yeah, it's randomization or pseudonymization. I don't know which word is correct for it.
And is it correct that we still, because when I've been involved in recruitment in Anima before, sometimes you'll even like almost, what's the word I'm looking for? Like censor if they include information that would make it obvious who they are.
Yeah. Sometimes I remove, because we also anonymize our recruitment process. So, sometimes it might happen that we have volunteers or activists who are actively involved in work of our organization. And when someone, for example, mentions in the application form that, yeah, I'm volunteer of Otwarte Klatki, probably very often this kind of information isn't important in the process, but it might help recruiters identify who this person is. So sometimes I also remove this kind of information from the answers to have it fully anonymized. Yeah.
Cool, thank you. Catherine, I wanted to ask you, and everyone else, but also let's start with you. What difficulties have you faced? Because recruiting is, in my opinion, extremely difficult, but one of the most important things we can do. So yeah, tell us about problems and challenges that you've had in GFI, or even previously.
So one that we are facing right now is just the rise of artificial intelligence and just ChatGPT being available to anyone. So that means that we had to rethink how we assess skills in the process, because as I mentioned, we had a number of written stages in which it would be very easy to use ChatGPT. And the thing is, we want to see how candidates think, not how AI kind of aggregates data. So one thing we've done is introduce cognitive aptitude tests, which is a way for us to still assess specific skills, but kind of minimize the interference from artificial intelligence. And it's also, along with work samples and structured interview, it's one of the ways that has the kind of strongest research backing kind of the efficacy of the method. It's kind of one of the most predictive tools in recruitment to predict job performance. So it's one solution that we are experimenting with. And yeah, we need to kind of be aware of those evolutions and take them into account in how we design our process.
That just got me thinking, because AI also kind of is on my mind a lot. And I recently looked for a role. I didn't hire anybody. And just for fun, I threw my questions, we have some tasks that people have to do during half a day visiting the office, and they can use the internet and whatever. And I threw the questions at ChatGPT, and some of the answers were just as good as what the candidate gave me, and they had an hour to do this task, and ChatGPT did it in a couple of seconds. So it really is a good idea, I think, for us.
Everyone's getting ideas now.
So I think we have to be smart about this, how we solve for that.
Yeah, I mean, we do put a lot of thought into the questions that we ask in the different assessments. And so we also do kind of benchmark against ChatGPT and try to find questions that are still highly relevant for the role, but that ChatGPT might not be as good as answering. And also just seeing what comes out kind of help us calibrate how we can assess candidates' applications.
Well, just real quick, the task I had was to analyze a PDF, but ChatGPT has these plugins, right? So I used a plugin that made ChatGPT be able to read the PDF and gave me a summary. And so this is all kind of stuff we probably have to keep in mind in the future. Yeah.
Yeah, that's also something that worries me a lot, because we have also a lot of stages in a written form. And I did the same. I asked ChatGPT all our recruitment questions, and what is the most worrying thing is that it can answer really well on, for example, questions from the second stage, which is cultural and value fit, which is very, very worrying. So I think that also will be something that we will be struggle a lot in the future. Maybe some kind of solution will be to have less forms, less written forms, and more, I don't know, interviews or phone calls at the beginning of the recruitment process. What I can add to this is that for us, one of the difficulties that we are still facing is draining our talent pool. And this because we were hiring a lot of people with a quite short amount of time. I think it's like it's caused by a big growth of the organization. At the beginning, we had like a very big, we were totally grassroots organization, so there were many volunteers, and I think it was really, really nice that at the beginning we hired a lot from our volunteers. And right now we are more open also to recruit people, not only from Otwarte Klatki, but I think that increasing like a talent pool with people who are dedicated to work for animals, who are like a good fit to our organizational culture, will be like a big challenge for us for me in the future.
Mahi, do you want to add anything else other than AI stuff about difficulties?
No AI stuff this time. It really depends on the role where we have difficulties. Something that may be specific to Germany is campaigners with experience. That's really hard to find. And one of the reasons might be that the Green Party is now part of the government. And I heard they actually recruited several campaigners now. Like people who want to learn to be campaigners, you can find a lot, but with actual experience, it's really hard. We actually used headhunting. It's not a PC word, right? But you know what I mean. Organization to help us with that. And yeah, with other roles, one other difficult one is fundraising. Of course, I think that's kind of more of a global problem. And for other roles, we sometimes have 100+ applications, and a lot of people are really awesome, and we're having a really hard time to decide who to pick. So it really depends on the role.
I want to ask another question now, just to make sure that it's actually asked, because it's my favorite one. So, what's the biggest recruitment fuck up that you've ever made? I mean, I know Anya's got, I already know hers, but maybe we can go to Catherine first.
To be honest, I don't think we ever had like a big fuck up, like something completely break or someone sue us or something like that.
Interesting mistake.
Yeah. I think maybe one thing is around diversity. After a while with the process, we kind of noticed that there were areas of diversity where we were not getting kind of the results that we wanted. And I quite like this sentence about kind of every system being perfectly designed to get the results that it gets. So if you're not getting the results that you want, there's probably something with the system. So it's something that we constantly reflect on, constantly check ourselves and try to make adjustment to the process to make sure that we have the most diverse pool of candidates that we can get, and we have like the best talent all across Europe and all across different metrics as well.
And is there anything then that you've done that you think has particularly worked?
Putting a lot of effort on our promotion and a lot of thought around where we promote our roles. So making sure that we do, again, target, like we can recruit all over Europe. So making sure that we are targeting all corners of Europe. And so kind of being a bit proportionate with job boards and social media channels and things like that, so that we are, again, like promoting across different countries, sometimes using diversity-focused channels as well. So there's like a lot of things that you can do. Yeah.
Cool, thank you. Mahi.
I think my biggest fuck up is kind of a classic. I hired a person who was kind of the best candidate, but I still had some kind of stomach aches around the decision. And I hear that a lot of people do that. And in this case, like the person drove the team crazy, got a lot of complaints. The person wasn't kind of really doing what I asked them to do. And luckily we had kind of a probation period, and that was one of the very few times when we in the probation period said, okay, it's not going to continue.
So there's a phrase that I like to think of when I'm involved in recruitment, which is something like hire slowly, fire quickly. Is that something that you would subscribe to?
We are not on the fire quickly side. I don't know if that's kind of the best way to do it. We are kind of, when we face problems, that might be a cultural thing, really patient and put a lot of effort into fixing things, maybe sometimes too much. I'm not entirely sure.
Does it work?
Sometimes yes, sometimes no.
If I may just add something about this kind of issue, I think one thing you should always keep in mind when we're recruiting is like always keep the not hiring option on the table. Because yeah, again, I think that's a mistake that a lot of organization makes. And so we often need people and we often need them very quickly, but there's probably a bigger cost in hiring the wrong person than just not hiring right away and maybe opening the same role a bit later on.
Totally agree. Anya, tell us about your fuck up.
I have like so many very, very stupid fuck ups. Like once I overslept on the recruitment interview. I don't know if there is any lessons learned. Maybe do not schedule it in the early morning. But I have another one from which I think I learned maybe a little bit more. So when we started to conduct the interview processes, very often I totally underestimate the time that it takes. And because of that, we had like many delays, timeline changes. And I think it was very bad for recruitment team, but also for people who applied. And I can imagine that when you apply to animal rights organization, it's the situation that maybe we don't think about our work like that in our everyday life, but for many people who applied, it's like a dream job, is a really dream job, is a job with mission. And I think that very often people are waiting for the results. And it's way much better to stick to the deadlines that we share to the job offer, because I really don't want to give to all these people any additional stress because of recruitment process. In general, recruitment process is stressful, so I don't want any additional stress for them. So right now, I learned to plan recruitment process with a time buffer. I always collect information about holidays, events that might cause delays, like even this event. Like this is the time when my whole recruitment team is here, so we cannot work on the recruitment process normally. And yeah, I believe this is something that I can share. Also, there were many recruitment processes at the beginning when I started that I'm really not proud of. Like, for example, we didn't have any answer key, so we were scoring everything very subjective. And I think that scoring something like on a very subjective level might significantly increase the risk of cognitive biases. So definitely that wasn't a good way to conduct the recruitment process. Right now we have an answer key. We collect data and statistics about every single question, so sometimes we remove it, remove some of them. So this is something what we learned also.
Maybe a quick question, but are you hiring for any roles right now? Mahi's nodding.
Yeah, a couple. We're hiring video person right now. We are pretty far along that process, but we are about to look for a media relations person. And further down the line, our admin team will look for support. Our director of administration is like, I need a nerd. So any German-speaking nerds out there, keep your eyes open. And then we are kind of looking at our org chart, and that might lead to some new positions as well, but that's not clear yet.
German-speaking nerds, speak to Mahi. Catherine, what about you?
Yes, we are currently recruiting an operations assistant. So maybe for people who might not be familiar with the term operations, nothing medical there. It's what we call kind of the back office of the organization. So anything from recruitment, what is usually called HR, finances, travel bookings, administration, all those kind of things that are kind of supporting the rest of the organization and making everything run smoothly and allowing the other teams to also do their best work. So this position, you don't need any previous experience. It has a lot of variety built in and a lot of flexibility as well. So you can find all the information on our website, so gfieurope.org/careers. And we will be hosting a live Q&A about the roles on August 20th as well. Same, all the information on the website.
Okay, so right now we are recruiting for media specialist in Poland, but there are also other recruitments planned: corporate outreach, fundraising, graphic designer. We started a few days ago recruitment for campaign manager and advocacy specialist in Bulgaria. There is also ongoing recruitment process for communications manager in Ukraine, and there are also recruitment planned for Anima International Organization and for the Open Cages UK. For campaign managers roles and for sure advocacy specialist on the more international level.
Cool, thank you. Is there anything that you guys do in your recruitment processes that you think perhaps others would consider counterintuitive or maybe even just slightly odd?
I mean, I think for a lot of organizations, just not asking for CV or cover letters would be counterintuitive. It seems like we have some common practices here. So I think that would be one of the big things. We still have, I mean, not even for other organizations, but we even have candidates who get very puzzled by the fact that we don't ask for a CV. So that would be one of the big ones.
I think for us is, in general, in the job offer, we share a lot of materials like webinars or articles, books for people who are interested in applying, but might not have experience in, for example, animal rights or the specific job positions. So, for example, if we recruit for marketing specialists, we share many materials about marketing. So basically, when I was thinking what is unusual for our recruitment process, I think that the most unique is that we don't rely strongly on someone's experience or education. That's why we have these webinars that I mentioned, and so we share information about specific job position, our theory of change, our organizational culture. So even if someone, for example, wasn't working in marketing or was an animal rights activist, all these people can just learn from it if they don't have this background. And for me, it's like it has happened several times for me in the recruitment process that people who learned from our materials and didn't have experience had better results than someone who had like 2 or 3 years of experience. For example, in the marketing. And for me, is a sign that like this person who has like the same result probably has a very good potential for this role. So, for example, in 2 or 3 years, this person might be even better than the person who already has this experience. So when I was thinking what's the most unique in our recruitment process, I think is that in general, we don't care that much about previous experience and educational background.
I'd say it's probably not that new, but it was kind of new for us for a while. We, or maybe that was me also too much, were like all smiles in the interview and all just kind and not asking any tough questions. And I've learned over time that's actually a good opportunity to, first of all, set the record straight for the candidates. Maybe I think something's not a good fit, and then I ask them about it, and they actually give me a really good answer. So it's good to ask them. I also get kind of a feeling, how do people react to tough questions and maybe to tough situations. So that was a learning for us. Something else maybe is to be open for boomerangs. Like we had a couple of people leave the organization and just come back a couple of years later. And Oh yeah, one thing we do is we send over, like we have a couple of cultural guidelines, and we have only recently started to do that, and just send them over to applicants and say, here, this is what to expect culturally, and we'd like to you to self-evaluate, is that a good fit for you or no? And if not, no problem, but then it's just not a great fit.
Cool, thank you. We've probably got people in the audience. I'm thinking of two kind of sections of people. People who are either wanting to recruit or maybe will need to do that in the future, who are building an organization, or people who want to work in animal advocacy space. So I'm trying to like get good questions for both sides. So I'm wondering, for those who are looking to work in animal advocacy, what advice would you give to them if they want to work in the movement and perhaps they never have before? Is there anything that you could recommend?
I'd start with kind of figuring out, first of all, maybe what are the organizations where it could be a good fit and where it's a cultural fit. And then figure out like what value can I add to this organization? Like what are my specialties? How can I get better at that? And something that I've gotten recently from talking to a lot of leaders is they're looking to increase the resilience in their teams. So if you have anything to show for that shows that you're a resilient person, or maybe that can be something you want to look into yourself, how can I get more resilient, and then kind of show that in the recruitment process, I think right now that can be very helpful.
Yeah, a few things come to mind. Probably valid for both candidates and organization. I would say focus on skills. So for candidates, focus on getting career capital, develop skills that will be useful, and ideally that won't be replaced by AI in a couple of years. And for organization, like again, in the recruitment process, like very similar to what Anima does, we also really focus on skills and potential rather than years of experience, qualifications. So that would be the main one. For candidates, again, I would say maybe don't limit yourself to nonprofits. I think there are a lot of other opportunities to have a lot of impact for animals outside of the nonprofit sector. For example, in alternative protein, I'm pretty convinced that there is potential for anyone with any background to find a space and to contribute. So if, for example, you have been working for a few years in a field, but then want to transition to helping animals, but you have some skills, if those skills are useful for a company outside of the animal advocacy space, they are going to be skills that are going to be valuable as well in the alternative protein sector. So sales, HR, finance, communications, marketing, all of that you can use as well in the like in a role that would be helpful for animals. And then maybe one last thing, if you do decide to go the nonprofit route, as you mentioned, like for a lot of people, it's like a dream job. We come with a lot of excitement, and I think a lot of people just want to help, so would take any job that they get offered. I think, again, like as you mentioned, Maki, kind of look at the culture fit, like make sure that it's a workplace that works for you. I think, like in any sector, like it's not just teddy bears and roses. So make sure that you have, like you're entering an organization with a healthy culture and a supportive culture, especially if you're working in a role where you get to see a lot of very graphic images and disturbing images. Like in the interview process, like do ask about kind of the support system that you will have in this role. So yeah, don't hesitate to ask about the culture of the organization when you're interviewing. It's as much a decision for the organization as from you, and so yeah, you shouldn't be shy from asking those questions.
I'm wondering what can I add, because you said about very important stuff that I agree. Maybe I can share that something from my personal experience. So sometimes when I talk to people who work with us with Anima International, and they are very, very competent, dedicated, hardworking, and they have like very often a lot of features that makes me feel that they are a very good fit for specific roles, that they are the right people on the right place. And what is very common for them is that during the recruitment process, they didn't believe that they can really get this job. And even after the recruitment process, where sometimes they were better than dozens or hundreds of people, they thought that we made mistake by hiring them. And saying this, I want to emphasize that our minds, unfortunately, our brains are full of cognitive distortions. So very often we are not the best people to judge our skills. So if you think about applying, just don't judge yourself. Like, just let other people to check if you're a good fit for the specific role that you want to apply.
I just also wanted to add one thing. This was something that was important for me when I was getting involved, and it was not, if possible, don't necessarily wait until there is a role there for you. I think it's a good idea if you can, if you have the time, to start volunteering. Get involved just this way. That way you can meet the people in the teams, you can get a real idea of what the culture of the organization is like. Is it for you? Is that where you can make an impact? Okay, so there's a lot of questions asked from the audience, so I think I might actually go straight there. Actually, one final question from me, sorry guys. What advice would you give to organizations that are just starting to recruit? Maybe it's their first recruitment ever, or maybe they've done a few but it didn't go very well. Is there anything that you guys have learned that you think you could share?
One mistake, I think, was we didn't have much of a process to begin with, and it was all like gut feelings and not very standardized. Like, we would invite people over to spend a day at the office and give them tasks, but we would give them tasks at hand, like, what can you do, what we actually need to be done right now? But that made it impossible to compare. So even though, like, maybe you want to hurry up growing, I think taking some time to build a nice process, and by now there are a lot of processes out there that you can probably, for 80% or so, copy and paste. I think that's one thing I'd do differently now.
Just talk to people. Go to other people who've done it before. I think we're all working toward the same goal, so a lot of people would be willing to speak with you and give you advice and share how they do things. So that would be the first step. And then, as I mentioned before, just design a process that is focused on skills first, and then always keep the non-hiring option on the table. The first few people that you hire will have such a disproportionate impact on your culture that you want to make sure that you bring in people who will help build the culture that you want for your organization. So yeah, it's big decisions.
There had to be some kind of disagreement, but I totally agree that sometimes not hiring is the best options. And I think that hiring a wrong person might be a huge damage, especially when you hire like a second, third person at the beginning of the organization. So I think just remember that not hiring anyone is also like an option in the recruitment process. What came to my mind is that to always remember that the recruitment process is time-consuming. At the beginning is very time-consuming for the leaders, I believe, for people who are the most engaged ones, who have the better understanding of organizational culture, values, strategies. So sometimes it happens that these people push the recruitment process back in relation to the other duties that they have. So at the beginning, I believe that these people, they should really pay a lot of attention and spend a lot of time in the recruitment process. And this is something that even if it's really time consuming, it's something that really pays off. And I think that at the beginning, it's really important to do it in the right way.
Cool, thank you. So we're going to go to the audience questions now, and yes, there are a lot. So I will try and get through as many as I can. The first question from Heidi. What are your thoughts about recruiting from the movement versus recruiting from people outside the movement?
I think the latter is getting more and more important as we spoke about the talent pool is being drained in our movement. And this has kind of been a learning, I think, for several organizations to start looking outside. And that kind of often comes together with the question, is our salary model still a good fit? Like we might have to hire people that are not as dedicated as volunteers and activists, but we probably want to look for people who are like still very much aligned. They are maybe vegans or they really care about our issues, but they've also gotten used to high salaries. So that kind of leads to a couple of difficult questions that we haven't fully figured out ourselves.
We are open for both options. And that's why we shared these webinars and materials that I mentioned. And I think like our volunteers or activists have this some kind of advantage that they are in the, for example, organizational culture. And what is really surprising for me is that people from the outside of the movement, like they also have like very good results in our this cultural value check stage. So we are like open for both, I believe, right now. And yeah, as Mahi said, there is for sure this problem with draining talent pool. So in Anima International, what we should improve in the future is for sure how to get more people involved and reach out to people who are not in the movement, but maybe they care about the case and there might be dedicated full-time activists.
Yeah, I mean, the more the merrier. So anyone's welcome to apply. I think at GFI we are in a maybe slightly different position that because of our mission and because of our theory of change, we appeal to a wide variety of people. So obviously people who care about animal welfare and animal suffering, but also people who care primarily about climate change, global hunger, food security, all those kind of things. So we do get people from all walks of life, all kind of backgrounds and very different motivations who apply for us. And we're very happy with that diversity. I think we appreciate getting people with different perspectives as well.
Okay, question from Louisa. Hiring campaigners and corporate outreachers is, in her opinion, a lot harder to do compared to other more established positions. What are your thoughts on finding the unicorns versus training new talent? Do unicorns exist? There's no answer.
I'm not sure it's necessarily one or the other. I mean, it depends on the needs. Like you can still try a recruitment process with like a very niche role. Like we at GFI do have some of those. And so a lot of it is kind of being very strategic with your promotion and your outreach. So finding those channels for those kind of specific skills. But then again, like no hire is always an option. And maybe if you can't find anyone later on, you might open a role that's slightly more generalist and try to find someone that you can train and bring to those specialist skills maybe.
That's probably the most specific thing for animal rights movement. I mean, hiring campaigners, because it's easier to find, I don't know, someone who is a graphic designer or a marketer. So when we were thinking about it, what we did is that we were sharing these materials that I mentioned, webinar, to get people as much knowledge as we can about our work, our campaigns, and so on. When I was thinking about it, I thought, okay, maybe on the labor market there are people who are some kind of campaigners, but maybe what they did is commercial campaigns. Maybe there is something common here. So what we try to do in the recruitment process is to try to find if these people, like, maybe it's really hard for them to have like specific knowledge about the campaign. And to be honest, very often this is something totally learnable. So that's why probably more important is to check some kind, I don't know how to really name it in English, but some kind of intuitions about campaign, about how to run the campaign, some kind of like, yeah, general skills, maybe not specific knowledge. But for sure, this is the hardest thing for animal rights movement, right? Because like many things, what we do are very, very specific for us. And campaigns are probably the most specific field of work.
I believe in unicorns. But see, I think there are some people who are just awesome fits, and it's just no question they're the best candidate out there, and you really want to hire them. And I also really believe in training people. We haven't done that for a while because that has been our model for a long time. We had volunteers. There's a German system called Bundesfreiwilligendienst, where people, instead of doing the military service, which we got rid of, can do non-profit work and get a little bit of money from the government and from the organization. So we had a lot of junior people come in, and we trained them and hired them, and that led to a lack of diversity. Like we became a really young team. So for a while now, we've focused on getting more experienced people. But I'm pretty sure we'll go back to having trainees in the organization and just making sure we get really dedicated, motivated people and teach them the skills that they need to have.
Just a reminder that if you want to see a question asked, you can vote in the app. Thomas is nodding. So next question, also from Heidi. At what level is the salary compared to similar jobs outside of the movement? And if the salary is lower, how do you tempt people to work for you and get the talent with enough experience? So it's kind of related to what we just discussed.
So at GFI, we benchmark our salaries for the nonprofit sector with similar roles, but we offer basically 20% above that kind of median rate. So we're in rather fortunate position for the nonprofit sector. So yeah, so far we haven't really had issues on that front. But yeah, it's kind of the challenge is getting the data for different countries sometimes. But yeah.
Yeah, for us, it really depends on the role. Our current salary model is just really depends on where you are in the hierarchy of the organization and not what role you have. So there are some roles, I think, where the salary is fine compared to other jobs, also in the industry. But then there are things where our salaries are really low compared to the industry. And that can lead to challenges. And I haven't found the perfect solutions. Should we have a more kind of diverse set of options in terms of in our salary model, or should we just go through that, or should we, what we currently do is we have kind of a rule, if our current salary model doesn't allow us to find a great candidates, we have the option to go somewhat higher. Yeah, I don't have the answers. If you do, please share.
So is that something that you're looking to change?
We're going to look into it, but I have no idea what we'll decide.
Our salary model depends on experience, mainly experience, not someone's role in the organization. It's transparent. We share it, of course, during on-the-job offer. What is problematic, I think, like in Poland, our salary model, I think we are upper, is it powyżej? Upper the median, and I think comparing to non-profit sectors, our salary are good. but comparing to commercial sector is worse. And it's something what I think Mahi said, that like you need to find a balance to find dedicated people to this role. So I also don't want to have like a very high salaries and attract people who are only interested in money. So we also like need to find a balance. What is really hard to have like a salary which still attract people from specific talent pools. But on the other hand, we want them to be really dedicated to our mission because it's very, very important thing.
There's a few people asking questions similar to this, and it includes my favorite word. So have you ever had a candidate who has the right attitude and good skills, but you don't hire them because they're not a good cultural fit? It's the right buzzword.
Okay, so for us, the cultural fit is the second stage. So even if they had the good skills, I didn't get this information because it's something very, very basic. So we check someone's skills on the first stage. So even if there was this kind of situation, it didn't happen. What happened for us a few times is that someone had a very good result on this value cultural stage and worse result on the third stage, which is connected with specific skills to the job position. And in that kind of situation, I give people feedback that they are a good fit for our organization, but maybe not for this specific role. And what I offer them is to apply again to the different roles and just don't fill out the first two stages again because it doesn't make sense. So in this kind of situation, these people very often apply, but for the different roles, and they start the recruitment process from the third stage.
This question reminded me of a situation I recently had where the skills looked awesome and like a great fit. And then I had a sense from reading the CV that some stuff might not be a great fit. And I just raised the question during the interview, and I sent the person our like cultural guidelines. And we kind of mutually agreed that it wasn't a good fit culturally, and I'm glad we did.
Yeah, I don't think I have anything very valuable to add. I think it's like a whole package in a way, like you need both the skills and the right attitude. We at GFI Europe, we don't really call it like culture fit. There's also like the whole debate between like culture fit versus culture add. So it's more like general attributes that we care about, that we will look for, like collaboration is a big one. And so it's more if there's like things that appear to be red flags, that might mean that yeah, it might not work in ways of working, or there might be kind of clashes in terms of managing people, or like, again, yeah, I mean, I guess it boils down to culture fit, but it's the whole thing. And in the end, we want to hire like the best candidate.
Yeah. That's interesting. It sounds like it's maybe slightly different to how we do it in our international. Like, I won't go into details, but that interests me. Okay, so we've got like time for maybe one, maybe two questions. Heidi is on fire today.
Who's Heidi?
Who is Heidi? Hello, Heidi. How do you realize that this person should be fired? How many chances, trials to change do you give them? Okay, end the recruitment panel on how to fire.
I mean, we never had that issue at GFI Europe, as I know of. Again,
You've never fired anyone?
No, I don't.
Wow.
Again, like, because we have such a thorough recruitment process, and we do communicate a lot with candidates as well. So again, candidates get to know us as much as we get to know them, and it means that, again, when we make a hiring decision, we have a very high level of confidence in their ability, and that it will be a great working relationship, and that they will go on to do amazing work with us. But I think like we have an attitude of trust and empathy and kind of putting people first. So if it were to come to that, we would just give as much opportunity to find solutions to the issue, and like that would always be like the very, very last resort, I think.
I don't have a great answer. I think there's no counting to be done here. Like, you can't say, I gave you feedback for 5 times and asked you to change something and you didn't and now you're gone. Like, it really depends on whether they didn't put the mug in the dishwasher or it was something more serious. So I think it's more, I don't know, it's probably more of getting a good sense, is the person still the right fit or not? And,
So do you mean like intuition? A feeling?
I think, yes, it's part of it at least. Like, I don't think we can kind of compute everything. Like, this I wouldn't know how to compute. I mean, maybe you could figure out like a ranking scale of magnitude of mistake happened and number of times it happened, but I don't think that would be the right approach.
Yeah, agree. Sometimes the results or the mistakes are not a good, how to say that, indicator, yeah, to judge someone's work. I mean, because mistakes are something totally related to our work, especially when we do something new. The chance that we will make a mistake increasing. So I don't think we have like an attitude to judge someone's work only based on the results, and I also think it's a bad approach. So I think like it's a mix of like intuitions and working with someone. In Anima International, we have a system that every single person has a supervisor. This is a person who is responsible for hiring and firing. So very often it's not me. I'm not responsible for firing people in general. And we have like this structure of responsibility for every people work in organization.
Thomas, sorry, I will just add one tiny thing. I do occasionally have to fire people, and I think, in my opinion, firing is extremely important. I think we don't do it quick enough in the movement, even in Anima International we don't. And quite often, the reason you need to fire someone is just they're not the right fit culturally. Quite often it's nothing to do with skills, at least in my experience. And there is no trial or chance that you can give people to entirely change their personality, in my opinion. And just means they're probably going to be better in another organization. So that's my 2 cents.
I want to add one more. Maybe we don't think about it like that in everyday life, but for me, firing and removing people from the organization is also a building organization. So building organization is also about removing people who are not a good fit in it. And sometimes we just postpone it because it's personally hard for us to do it. But very often in this kind of situation, it happened also for me that I was postponing it. And I think I was more caring about myself because I just didn't want to do it. And in this kind of situation, it's super important to think about the organization on the first place.
Okay, we have to end there, but I hope you all find your unicorns and come and talk to these people if you want to know some more. Thank you.